Okay, new territory. This is one of the big questions right now.
Okay.
And it's a very difficult issue, and it hits many of us very close to home. And in some ways, I think we've been under-resourced and in some ways exposed a little bit in that regard when we come to the issue of homosexuality. In that maybe we've not been prepared to think well through it because it's a complicated issue. And we've been reactive within culture's eyes, and it deserves a thoughtful response. So here's the question that came in, and you can take this in a couple different directions. When the Bible mentions homosexuality, what does it really mean? Since gay marriage is now legal, does that mean God is trying to tell us something? Because the Bible mentions how God puts everything in motion, even politics, so God let gay marriage be legal, right? So there's a couple different categories there to be spoken to, but help us think through this very kind of thorny issue of homosexuality.
Well, first of all, God doesn't put everything in motion. I don't know who said that, but if you believe that, that's a nightmare God, because that means he puts in motion the rapist. And he's the one who brings about the person who slits the throats of people wantonly. God does not put things in motion all the time. Sometimes he does, but a good bit of the time he permits things. He permits things, and so he causes and he permits. So I don't believe God's in control. I believe he's in charge, but I don't believe he's in control. And when I say I don't believe he's in control, that means I don't think he's causally responsible for everything that happens. I think that we are causally responsible for a lot of things that happens, and I think there's a lot of things that happen in the world that God doesn't want to happen and wish they didn't. I sure hope that's true, because I would hope he's not sitting up there cheering when people are getting raped. That would be tough for me to choke down. Just because something is happening doesn't mean that God is behind it. Otherwise, you'd have to say that God set the Third Reich in motion and Hitler. Anybody want to believe that that was a great move of God to destroy the Jews? I don't believe that. So culture changes because of human decisions, and we live in a very, very morally confused culture. When you can care more about saving a dog than an aborted baby, there's something deeply wrong with this culture. And so I don't trust the culture to give me moral guidance, because people make moral decisions based on their emotions without any objective standard. Homosexuality is an inclination of sexual desire for and or acting out of that desire with the members of the same sex. And that is an abomination to God. It is a serious evil. It's not a small deal. It's not like, stealing your next door neighbor's basketball. This is a major evil. And we don't believe that because the adults in our world are so promiscuous themselves. A good many of the men are watching pornography. The things we see on TV are overly sexed, as are movies, that we don't have enough adult men and women who can look at young children or teenagers and say, live the way I live. Be sexually pure. You'll be better off in the long run, because the adults aren't doing it themselves. They're hopping in bed with each other as wives all the time. So we're a sexually crazy culture, because the absolutization of desire has replaced truth. When people used to try to guide their lives on the basis of truth, but around 1950, that went out the window. And so from the 50s on, something had to fill that vacuum, and what filled the vacuum of truth is the satisfaction of desire and gratification, and that is the absolute. And so sexual activity is one of the greatest goods because it helps satisfy desire, and how you do it doesn't make any difference. And so how do I know homosexuality is wrong? I would not appeal to the Bible because the Bible doesn't appeal to the Bible. Paul tells us that we know homosexuality is wrong, not because God commanded it, but because it's contrary to nature. And what that means is it is a violation of the way we were made to function. So I was on a radio show and they said, "Why are you evangelicals against homosexuality?" And I said, for the same reason I would be against my neighbors driving their car in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. If you drive your car in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, you're not going to have a flourishing car for very long because that's not the way it was made to function. Now, what kind of a neighbor would I be if my neighbors were driving their car in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and I sat back and watched them and I never tried to say anything to them to get them to stop? That wouldn't be loving, it would be cowardice. And so I said, the reason that I am against homosexuality is that it is not conducive to human flourishing. It will not produce a life that will flourish. And this is undermining the attainment of a full human life. And it is contrary to nature. The second way you can know, is this helpful to you? The second way you can know homosexuality is wrong is because it's evident to the senses. Now, I'm not using the Bible for any of this. If something is evident to the senses, that means you can know it by looking at it, okay? So if I have a key and I have a door lock and I have a trash basket, it's evident to my senses that the key goes in the lock, not the trash basket. You examine male and female body parts, and it's evident to the senses that the male body part was made for the female body part. The male body part was not made for the male body part. And so it's obvious to the senses that homosexuality is wrong. Now, what do we do about it? We continue in a warm, non-angry, non-hostile way to assert what the truth is and tie that truth into human flourishing. We want to tie a proper sexual activity into a life that is conducive to having the richest life over the long run, because that's the way we were made to work. That's what we tie it into. When we deal with particular folk that are that way, we love them and try to help them. We are clear about what we believe, but you know, there are a lot of people in the church, including me, that have got a lot of sin problems. And so, you know, sometimes I need to be admonished about the things I'm doing that are wrong. And my friends never tire of admonishing me, pardon me for this. But we love and reach out to them. So I make a distinction between presenting our views in public versus what we do to an individual. We reach out to them, but in public, we make very clear what our views are, but we tie it into human flourishing, and we don't picket or march. We don't communicate angrily. It doesn't help anybody. We just, with dignity, state this is our view, and here's why we hold it. That's what I would say.